Oh, guys, man, I don't know if repeating recordings is actually an advantage or if this is actually a disadvantage. I feel like each time I'm recreating this video, I'm adding some cool stuff, but at the same time, I'm losing some essential details. So I don't know. Please leave me a comment below if you feel like this stuff is actually helpful. And if I miss out on a certain aspect of explanations, or if I'm going too fast or too slow, I would be really happy to have a bit of feedback on that. But I think this topic is going to be a very powerful addition to your arsenal in the journey of building stuff in the Blender tool for Decentraland. And I was hesitating initially to cover the topic because it feels like it may be a little bit too complex for very basic stuff that we have kind of looked at before. And it's quite a jump, I think, in terms of level of complexity. But it just feels like this is the very first step of really making you capable of, following more advanced tutorials and at the same time actually like building stuff in Decentraland that is, beyond the absolute basics we've looked at until now. So I hope you have been able to cover a couple of the previous videos because we've looked at some of the basic techniques to how to create an object, how to import, export it, and then also how to apply a material with a color to it. And that was great. And now we're going to go one step further. And why am I excited about this topic? I'm now quickly switching over to the Decentraland builder. And here on the left, you have a section that shows you all of the constraints that you have with your scene. The bigger your scene, the higher the numbers are on here. That means you have more freedom to create stuff and you have more resources that you can use to put together something on your land. Now, if you have only a one parcel land, you will have a very severe limitation in terms of how many triangles you can use and also in how many materials you can use. I have never had issues with the other limitations until now, but with these two, I constantly run into problems where I've used up more than I'm supposed to. And one area where I have a problem right now is the materials area. It seems like I'm using way more materials than I should. And I was wondering, like, how can I manage this? Can I use less materials to represent the same stuff in Decentraland? And one area which I think I have some room for improvement is the way I manage colors, right? And if we switch over to Blender right now, in Blender, we have a table that we have put together in the last 3 videos, let's say. And I've been messing around with the table by applying different colors to it using a UV map. And when I tell you UV map without any context, you're probably thinking like, what the hell is he talking about? And maybe you even feel like this is too complex for you and you feel like you don't want to dive into it. But just give it a second. When I've seen this for the very first time, I thought, yeah, man, this is going to take some energy for me to learn. And essentially, I realized that it's actually quite straightforward and simple. And my fears were unwarranted. And I'm glad I mastered this technique. Mastered is maybe a bit of a stretch, but I know how to use that technique and I'm going to show you now. So to do so, I'm just going to quickly reopen our basic table object we have looked at last time. I'm going to quickly move over to the materials section here on the right. I'm going to switch over to object mode just to reset the whole scene. And I'm going to remove that material for now. So just in case you have not seen any of the other videos and you're using a different type of object like the default cube or something like that, now you can also follow us and we are not missing out on that particular step of adding a material. So let's just quickly add a material. And normally, if we would change the base color here to black, and we change the view here, we would actually see what we have seen last time. This is the most fundamental way of using a material to apply a color to your object. This works fine for a very first import and for the very first scene. The problem is actually that we have used one material for one color here. And the question is, what if we would have had 10 different materials that we want to apply to that object here? What if each side of each leg should have a different kind of shade of brown or something like that? If we would be in that situation, with that particular technique where we create a material and assign a color to it, we would use up 10 material slots that are highly valuable to us because we have a limitation of materials on the scene. So we don't want to use 10 different slots for 10 different colors. We want to use as little of these resources as possible and achieve as much customization as possible. And there is a trick to do so. And in order to use that trick, I'm gonna have to ask you to visit the Decentraland documentation. And in the docs section, under materials, you will find an area called textures. And under textures, you have a little link here that will take you to a place where you can download this map. And this map pretty much has a selection of colors that are preferred by Decentraland engine, because these colors are preloaded by Decentraland, and they're trying to explain this here. That means whatever you build using these colors on this map, on this image, will load faster. So not only do we save materials, but we also gain on speed. So if you have downloaded this little image, and if you save it to your desktop, then it would look something like that. Now, to use that image, we will need to bring it into Blender. And to do so, let's switch over to shading. Let's grab that image from the desktop and let's just pull it over into the work environment here. And now we have it inside Blender. It's that simple. And as a next step, grab that little yellow button at the level of color and drag it over to base color. And now we are using that image from the desktop that we just downloaded on our object. And I think you're starting to see where this is going. But before we move on, I just want to be very clear about what we just did and where we are. So as a quick summary, we have that little ball here, which represents the material section of the tool set that we have on the right side of the screen inside Blender. And that same tool is also now visible here. And that material output area that you see here is representing this area here. So there is nothing new. It's just the same stuff in a different kind of view. And normally we were in the layout or in the modeling section. And now we are in the shading section. And shading did not tell me a whole lot at first. What does shading mean? It's just really intimidating when you're not from the design world and you're not familiar with the wording of such as shading. Like, what does it even mean? But basically it means applying any kind of characteristics to the surface of the object, right? Any kind of visual characteristics. And in the shading environment, we just have this amazing little tool here at the bottom where we can mix and switch and combine different kind of effects that are then projected inside a material that we can apply to any object. So it's just, you have more options to customize more. But what we are doing now is just we're taking an image and we're pretty much feeding it directly into the material. And now the problem is that we are using 15 different colors uncontrollably across the object. And we need to be a little bit more precise than that. And to do so, we have to introduce another working environment, which is the UV editing environment. And as you can see, we have that UV map or that image available and visible here. And if I select the object, or actually, let us just select one surface here. If I select this surface on the tabletop, you're noticing that something is changing here. So I select it, we see that selection right over here. If I click over here into the left side, if I select that selection, and if I press letter G to move the selection and I move the mouse into a different area, if I change the view here, you will see that we have now picked up the same selection of greens that we had picked here on the left. So we're getting closer. How can we be even more precise? Well, this is how it works. Let's select the face again. Let's select the selection here again. You can also press the letter A on the keyboard to do the select all function. Now if you click on S for scaling and you click on 0 to reduce this selection to 1 dot and confirm with enter, you will see that now we have just consolidated the selection onto one single point that sits on top of that green. That means our little surface here has just become green. And you can just select that little dot. It's sometimes easy to overlook it, but if you select it and press G to move it somewhere else into the red area, let's say, you let go by clicking into the space, we have now selected a different color. And now you can go crazy with this, right? I mean, if you click on Shift and just select a few of these faces at the same time while keeping your finger on Shift, now you see that there is a whole bunch of selections here. If we select all of those, reduce those to a single point by using the S button on the keyboard and then 0, enter. And now if you select that little dot, use the letter G to move it to, let's say, black. We are starting to creating something really cool with multiple colors. And the very cool thing about it is that we are only using one material. And now imagine what's possible when you have a bigger object. This is a very cool way of use your resources much more efficiently. Now, it's important to say that there is another way that you can use this UV editing area. You can actually import a logo or some kind of other image into here. It doesn't have to be a specifically designed color map like we are using now. It could be any kind of image that you can then project onto any surface of your object by changing the way the selection is applied here on the imported image. But I think it would be wise to create a separate video on that, because I think a lot of people will want to use this kind of stuff, especially if you have needs to, let's say, have text inside Decentraland like I did here, or if you want to apply an image to a wall, or if you want to have a wooden table. You really need to become comfortable with UV editing, because to put something like this together with actual text inside Blender is going to be very resource intensive, because there is just too many curves on these letters. It's very hard to put text like into Blender, and it doesn't actually make sense to do so unless you really don't mind using up some resources and you need to make it 3D or something like that. So there is a very strong case for using UV maps in Blender, and this is one way of using those. I hope this was useful. Please leave some information, some content, some feedback in the comment section so I know that I'm on the right track, or if I need to change something, a like and a subscription would be highly appreciated, guys. And all right, man, like I think this is it for this tutorial. Thank you for making it all the way to the end if you did, and have a nice day.